Hi, I'm Mark Devine, retired Navy SEAL commander, New York Times bestselling author, founder of SEALFIT and Unbeatable Mind. And I help leaders and teams unlock their massive potential so they can align with a bigger purpose and mission and go out and kick ass and take names. And on this show with Dov Baron, we're going to talk about how you can stare down your wolf of fear and tap into that potential so you can get through this COVID-19 crisis stronger, better, and find the opportunity that lies inside this moment in history. Can't wait to talk to you. Hoo-yah.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. I'm your host, Dov Baron, the Dragonist, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything by transforming meaning into action. To find out more about me, you can simply go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. So let me ask you, what do you need in order to up-level your leadership? Well, Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan until someone punches them in the face. But as a leader, what do you do when it's not only you who's getting punched in the face, but everyone you love and lead are also simultaneously getting punched in the face? What do you do in order to recover? Well, stay tuned because you're about to find out. And remember, you can chat about this episode or any past episodes inside of our Facebook and LinkedIn groups. Simply look for the Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you tune into podcasts. And we always need your help in staying relevant. So please get over there, wherever there is, and tune in. And as you do us a favor, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday. And with a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every single show, we're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can also listen to us through Google Home and Alexa by simply saying, play Dov Baron Podcast. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. Our guest on this episode is Mark Devine. He is a retired Navy SEAL commander, New York Times bestselling author, successful serial entrepreneur. That doesn't mean he sold a lot of cereal, by the way. Mark Devine is an expert in elite performance, mental toughness, and leadership development for teams. His renowned SEALFIT and Unbeatable Mind training programs have transformed tens of thousands of people in all walks of life. Mark's own leadership skills were initially honed in the SEALs, where he was Honor Man, which is #1 graduate for his team. And he has later built several successful businesses, 2 of which have scaled to 8 figures. Mark teaches a unique warrior-led philosophy to executives, corporate leaders, elite sports team, entrepreneurs, and with a mission to lead 100 million people to the path of integrating the 5 mountain development by 2045. He is influential thought leader, lifelong martial artist, dedicated Zen meditation student, successful serial entrepreneur, New York Times bestselling author and host of the #1 ranked iTunes health podcast, Unbeatable Mind. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me welcome U.S. Navy SEAL, founder of SEALFIT, author of Staring Down the Wolf, Mr. Mark Devine! I'm excited.
Who is that guy?
Who is that guy? You want to meet him?
I want to meet that guy. Sounds amazing.
Good to have you here, Mark. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, Dov, it's awesome to be here. I appreciate you doing this.
My absolute pleasure, mate. You have, I talked about it just briefly there in the intro. Obviously, you come from a SEAL background. There's a lot of influence, and you have been a lot of influence on a lot of other people. But one of the questions we like to start the show with is, who is somebody who has had impact on you, like real impact on you as a leader, influence your leadership, that we may not know about, that we probably wouldn't even know that name, but somebody who's had a real impact on you?
Yeah, my first mentor had a transformative impact and continues to influence me today. And that was my Zen master, Tadashi Nakamura, who I stumbled into quite by accident when I was looking for a martial arts program before my days as a Navy SEAL. Believe it or not, Dove, I was a certified public accountant.
Yeah, I saw that. We're going to get into that. Because you look like an accountant.
I know, right? So accountant on the left hand, Navy SEAL on the right. One of them was not a good fit for me, right? Which one?
Who knows?
Yeah. So anyways, I was looking for a martial art. I had a recollection of my college roommate, Mr. David Bowman, who got a black belt in Shotokan karate while I was at Colgate University. I watched him transform. I was a competitive swimmer. When I graduated, I was a little bit older and I could swim a little bit faster, but I really wasn't a different person. I drank a lot of beer, was chasing women all the time. I had a good job to go to, but I was kind of the same Mark Divine as when I started. But I saw this guy change. Something changed in this guy, Dave. So when I went down to New York, I kept up my athletics, but something stuck in my head. It's like, I wonder what is in that martial arts stuff that, caused my friend Dave to transform, literally. Like he was way more mature, way calmer, way more focused. He was very quiet. Like when I was a freshman, he was just jabbering all the time and, picking on all the other students. And as a senior, he was very respectful and humble and quiet. I was like, wow. At any rate, so I walked into this studio called Sado Karate on 23rd Street in Manhattan, 20,000 square foot, beautiful wood floor. And there in the middle of the floor, teaching a class of blind students, was Tadashi Nakamura. At that time, he was about a 40-year-old karate master, 10th degree black belt, founder of this school with several 100,000 students worldwide.
Wow.
And guess what? He was also a Zen master. So even though he never made that claim, I later found out that this is my terminology, he was a Zen master masquerading as a karate teacher. So I took up Zen training when I was 20 under his tutelage, while I was doing martial arts and on the side. And we'd go to the Zen Mountain Monastery with a small group of people in Woodstock, New York, and meditate 2 or 3 times a year for long sits with the monks. It was crazy. Here I was, this podunk kid from upstate New York, now in the Big Apple, getting my MBA and my CPA. It's getting my MBA at NYU Stern School of Business. I was becoming a certified public accountant. But the most impactful thing that happened to me in those 4 years was the Zen meditation and the transformation that occurred in my own brain and my own heart, my mind. And that led me to basically can the entire career path that I was on and to become a Navy SEAL. And that's the story I tell in my book, The Way of the SEAL. There's a lot more to it than that, obviously.
Yeah.
So Nakamura was the most influential man in my life, probably.
That's interesting.
That's my father.
Because I'm a martial artist too, or was, and I boxing as well as martial arts, Western boxing and Chinese boxing. And nice. It's fascinating to me that, I have a face that looks like I was a martial artist. It looks like I was a boxer. But it's, it's interesting that everybody I know who took those things seriously, everybody I know who was a martial artist, is not a fighter.
No.
And that's the misconception of it.
Right.
So I was never a fighter, ever. I had a brother who was a fighter. I was not a fighter. When I boxed, my boxing trainer, who was an Olympic boxing trainer, said, if you had the killer instinct of your brother, who was a lunatic, and he had your calm, we'd be okay. You can actually be a good fighter. Right. But it was never about fighting. It was always about training the mind as well as the body and bringing those two things into sync. And it's so interesting that you went on to then become a Navy SEAL. Just very quickly, how did that lead to becoming a SEAL? Because it seems a million miles away. You're on Wall Street, you're going to be a CPA, you're doing CPA, and you end up as a Navy SEAL. It seems like a million miles apart, Mark.
Yeah, and it really was. What happened with me, Dov, and that now they're kind of, they can study this stuff through neuroplasticity and, brain imaging and stuff. But my brain went through some radical changes, and I was able to tap into aspects of my mind that were formerly closed off to me. I was just like most Westerner. I was just a thinker. I was always thinking and planning and strategizing and following kind of this storyline that was pretty much fed to me by my family and by our culture back east. The storyline says you're going to go to good college, then you're going to go get a graduate degree, and then you're going to go make a lot of money. And in my particular case, I was going to then go back and run the family business, which had been around for over 100 years, Divine Brothers. And that would have been a perfectly acceptable story until I started sitting down and meditating. And that allowed me, through the concentration and the mindfulness work, to begin to pick apart that story, to see that I was identified with that, but that wasn't me. And then when I started to ask, well, who's the real me? Who's the real Mark? Man, I was getting a whole bunch of different information coming to me in insights and imagery, and just kind of this feelingness that I was meant to be a warrior, not, a merchant, let's just say, if we're going to use archetypal energy. So I was meant to be a warrior. Now, I did not have, a sign or some sort of voice in my head that said, Mark, you're meant to be a Navy SEAL. I didn't even know what the SEALs were at the time. We're talking about 1986 and 87. We did not have the internet. We did not have movies like SEAL Team 6 and, or, Charlie Sheen jumping off bridges. We had nothing except for a couple old Vietnam era books, which I didn't know about.
Right.
So I started to ask, what if I'm supposed to be a warrior, then how am I going to fulfill it? Can I fulfill that as a CPA? And when I asked that question, I got the answer, no. Can I fulfill that back at the family business? Probably not. So then I started asking, how could I fulfill this archetypal urge, or what you might call my calling, or what the Buddhists or the Zen would call my dharma, right? And while I was asking that question, this process, by the way, took about 1.5 years. Like, this meditation works in strange ways. It's not a simple thing. There's no linear path, right? It's totally the opposite of rational thinking. But it was profound. And so when I started to ask the question, how am I supposed to fulfill this as a warrior while I'm still in my day job as a CPA, I stumbled across a Navy recruiting office on my way walking home from work one day. And I stopped dead in my tracks because there was a poster facing out from the inside. And it didn't say anything about the SEALs, but it said, be someone special across the top. And it had imagery of really freaking cool stuff, like guys jumping out of airplanes into the dead of the night, a little mini submarine. I was 22, I think.
Yeah, so that cool shit would really land well.
For sure, yeah. I'm not saying I'd do it now at 56, but it was pretty darn cool, and I looked at that and said, that is it. That's what I want to do. I didn't even know what it was. So I went back to the recruiter and I said, what's those guys in the poster? Who are they?
Right.
And they're like, oh, you don't want to know about those guys. I was like, well, who are they? They said, they're Navy SEALs. And I said, well, I want to do that. And they said, don't get your hopes up, right? They're like, at that time, the force was maybe 600 or 700 guys.
Right. And
most of them, I told them I wanted to be an officer. And they said, oh, you don't want to be an officer. Be an enlisted guy. And I said, no, I got an MBA. Actually, I want to be an officer. They said, okay, well, your chances of that, you have a better chance of becoming an astronaut than you have becoming a Navy SEAL officer from the civilian world. Because most of those guys, all of those guys, come from the Naval Academy or the ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Corps. And they only take like 15 a year back then, and most of those guys don't make it. So I said, well, I want to apply because I think this is me, right? This is me. Anyways, I could tell the rest of the story, but it might eat up your entire show, so I won't do it. But anyways, I did get in, and I was one of 2 people selected that year in the whole country.
One of two
to go into the SEALs from what's called Officer Candidate School, which is a civilian route into the military. And I showed up for Bud's class 171. I ended up classing up in 170 because that was going to be 8 weeks later. There's a whole story around that. And when I got there, it was like I was home. I was like, this is exactly what I was envisioning when I meditated. I had this sense that I was destined to be there. And I absolutely loved training. And I was prepared for it mentally, emotionally, and physically because of the meditation training, I'm convinced. So I crushed it. I ended up as the honor man or number one guy in my class. My entire boat crew team of 6 other guys graduated with me because we were there to support each other. And that was my first elite team that I built.
But it's
interesting. Out of 185 students, only 19 of us graduated, and all 6 of my boat crew and I were part of that team.
That's amazing. It's again, like you said, we could spend an hour just here before we even go anywhere else. But you said something that I think is really interesting, because I see this all the time. I guide, lead, coach, mentor leaders who are top elite people, and I'll often say to them, you're not in your path, right? You're not where you're supposed to. And these are guys who are doing super well, and they know that. They know they're not, but they're like, but I am at the top of the game. And I go, yeah, but it's not your game.
Wrong game, right?
Right. So if you've got the ladder leaned against the wrong wall, it doesn't matter how tall the ladder is or how tall the wall is. You're on the wrong freaking wall. And what's interesting to me, because I went through a similar thing myself, is that you knew this is not my wall. You were on the path. You got your MBA. You got the CPA. You're in Wall Street. It all looks right. You've got it. You come from a family business. So it's fascinating to me that you were. Do you put that down to meditation, that contemplative? Yeah, see,
absolutely, 100%, 100%. And what I teach now is that the answer to which wall you're supposed to be leaning against comes from within.
Yes.
From your heart, let's just say, or your soul.
Yep.
And if you don't take the time to slow down and connect with that aspect of your being, you could be winning the race in the wrong race. And it doesn't matter how much money you have or material success or how good you look to other people. You're going to have a growing sense of emptiness, incompleteness, lack of peace of mind, discomfort or dis-ease with this path you've taken and how much you've invested in it. And then it gets, the longer you wait, it gets harder and harder because you're building all this structure. Let's say you're an entrepreneur and you built this structure. How do you get away from a structure you spent 30 years building and investing all that money in? And other people are counting on you. And it leads to a real existential crisis.
Absolutely.
I had my midlife crisis at 21. I'm super lucky. Let's just put it that way. Super lucky.
Yeah, I had my midlife crisis at 32, and I still feel very blessed that I got to have it then. Mine came because I was free climbing 120 feet and fell.
Oh my gosh!
Smashed to pieces. But it was exactly the midlife crisis I needed at that time because I was leaning up against the wrong wall. So I totally get where you're coming from. It makes perfect sense to me. And I love that you've said, here you are, you're obviously military trained, you're a SEAL, you've gone through business school, you've done all those things. And you're actually saying to people, hold on, stop. You gotta calm down and go in. And you're not going to get the answer at university. You're not going to get the answer here or there, but you've actually got to go within. And I think that this is so important, Mark, because particularly for people who are in our worlds, they're all very heady. And I'm like, dude, I respect your head. You've done amazing things, but that's not your soul. And your soul is actually where you get fulfillment and serve.
Right. We're in an age where leaders need to lead with their head and their heart.
Yes.
In our training, one of my programs at SEALFIT, we call a Kokoro camp. It's our Hell Week training. Basically, it's 50 hours, nonstop physical, mental team training and emotional team training. We call it Kokoro camp because Kokoro is a Japanese word that means heart mind, or merging your heart and your mind, or your thinking mind, into your actions. We know through our training, and of course research has proven this out, that the brain, the head, the thinker has a negativity bias. It's 5 times as negative as positive. So if you're always in your head, you're dealing with all that negativity. And boy, look at how that's played out on the stage of, the world, right? The negativity bias of the media and politics, and you got to push back against it every day. But the heart can't be negative, right? And the heart, now they understand the heart is a brain. Just like your biome is a brain.
More neurons in your gut than there is in your brain. And what's more, what people don't understand is that the gut via the vagus nerve feeds the brain.
Right.
And that's why we have to look after. That's why we have to look after the gut biome. But
Right.
on top of that, this is what I want people to think about. There is no ego mind in the gut, so
No.
it doesn't process the same way.
Nor in the heart.
No.
Right. So I love what you just said, because the gut brain is really drives a lot of your instinctual behaviors, your subconscious programming. But the heart brain, which also has neurons and neurotransmitters, the heart is your seat of connection, your empathy, your ability to have care and concern. And the heart, left unchecked by the brain, has universal care and concern for all beings, including the Mother Earth. So when you're cut off from your heart, then you tend to be cut off not only from yourself, but from other people at some level. You can have transactional relationships, but that heartfelt relationship, most people keep that close held just for their inner circle, family, and they won't open it up. And what I experienced in the SEAL teams, and through my martial arts training too, and you as well, it's probably the first place I'm imagining that you really had a heartfelt relationship with other men, where you can go give them a hug and be like, I love you, man. You're awesome. Right after they decked you. Yeah, right. I felt the same thing in the teams. I absolutely loved my teammates. I was willing to lay down my life for them. And in our culture, Western culture, we really don't have room for conversations about that, especially for men. You know, we have one word to describe a myriad of experiences, right, which the heart connection can give you or provide you. Yeah. So at any rate, I've made it my life mission to teach leaders how to be badass like a Navy SEAL on one hand, but, you know, connect to their heart, and to be open and honest and authentic and loving on the other hand, because the two of those, when you merge the heart and the mind like that, that's where true authentic power comes from as a leader. I
couldn't agree more. We call them dragon leaders. That's my work, is dragon leaders. And the reason for that is you see dragons as all powerful, these amazingly powerful beings with hard shells, but they also fly. They can lift up. And what's more is that every dragon has one soft scale that is the direct access to the heart, and the heart is the direct access to the fire. And so the fire is the representation of the internal fire, and breathing that fire onto the lies so that you can actually set things free, because that fire breathes the lies and creates an alchemy.
Cool.
That changes traditional ideas into the gold, the way we're living our purpose. So we're very much on the same path.
I love it. Yeah.
And I love that you're bringing that part to it, because I'm a guy who grew up in a ghetto in Northern England, and you know, it was fighting and violence and all those kinds of things. And I am deeply from a center of love. For me, it's heart, mind, and soul, right? And bringing those things together. And how do we bring them together? And I always say, do I look like a wimp? And people go, no. And I go, right. So you don't piss me off. You don't piss with me at all. But at the same time, I'll be the first person to give you a kiss and a hug. I kiss my male friends on the lips because I'm a European.
Right.
And there's nothing gay about it. It's actually, I love my friends.
Probably not doing a lot of that now that you're in house arrest.
Not during COVID, no. Just generally, though. But, you know, I mean, it's just this thing, Mark. I love what you're saying here, because it's this message of the tough guy isn't what you think he is.
That's right.
That's a perception. The tough guy has a massive heart and he's connected massively to his heart, and he loves you deeply and powerfully and will fight for you because of that.
That's right. When I started SEALFIT, it was to train Navy SEAL candidates, special operators, so that they could be a more complete warrior. I call it a world-centric warrior that can make better decisions on the battlefield, to connect to the heart, you know, represent humanity first and maybe America second, and not just go out and play whack-a-mole, which is, you know, there are guys out there who just want to get in the military, go shoot the bad guys in the face. And that's just wrong, because, you know, what I teach them is that the true warrior is the last one to wield the weapon, the last to pick up the lance, and they'll find all other means possible to resolve conflict. Right? This is what happened. The problem when you put war in the hands of politicians who aren't connected to their heart, warfare and the defense budget, it leads to just chaos and destruction. You know, if you had true warriors who understood that war is the last result, then, you know, we might not even have nuclear weapons these days. But
that's
we're a far cry from that view.
Thank you. That's awesome. Now, we're gonna take a little break, and when we come back, I want to talk about, of course, your new book, Staring Down the Wolf. I want to talk about why it's called Staring Down the Wolf. There's a lot of great things I want to cover in that. But for right now, what I want to say to you, dear listener, is that this episode of Leadership and Loyalty is brought to you in part by our other podcast, which is Curiosity Bites. Curiosity Bites is the answer to the question, how do we bring people together who completely disagree? This is exactly what your mind and your soul have been craving. It's a chance to sit in on some real and sometimes intense conversations with some of the world's most interesting people including astronauts, neuroscientists, philosophers, holy men, quantum physicists, skeptics, entrepreneurs, entertainers, and even folks that you might think were a-holes who are actually truly fascinating. So simply go to dovbaron.com, DOVBARON.com, to find out how you can sink your teeth into an episode of Curiosity Bites. I want to welcome you back. I'm here with my guest. My guest today is Mark Devine. He is retired. I was going to say ex. It's not ex. It's retired. He's a retired commander for the Navy SEALs. He is a New York Times bestselling author and a very successful entrepreneur. And he's the author of a brand new book called Staring Down the Wolf. So why Staring Down the Wolf, Mark? Why is that the title?
When I train military special operators, I start with talking about these 4 dominant skills that we have to, all leaders need to have, especially when dealing with VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous times, which we're in right now, by the way, and we will be in forever for the foreseeable future. And so the first skill is breath control. The second skill is positive mindset. The third skill is imagery and visualization. The fourth skill is task orientation and crunching things down into little micro goals. Well, the breath control is easy to teach. They get it. They understand. They feel the benefits right away. The positivity, they can quickly slide into like positive psychology, happy, glad thinking. So I tell them that this is actually grounded deeply in warrior traditions. And the native Apache scouts had a story they would tell their budding warriors, that there were 2 wolves that lived inside each warrior. One was the wolf of fear that lived in your head, in your brain, and that's the thinker. And then the other was the wolf of courage that lived in your heart. And it was the wolf that you fed the most that dominated your character. And so they taught them to feed the courage wolf, to starve the fear wolf. And what that means is basically what we said earlier. It means learning to connect with your heart, learning to lead with your heart, not just your head, and to get out of fear-based reactionary conditioning so that you can be more responsive in a positive way. And they're like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And I connected to like their actions on the battlefield. What would this look like if you go into combat or you get ambushed and you're all stuck in your head and you're trying to solve the problem with linear rational thinking and you're disconnected from the empathy and from the intuition of your heart and your gut? You could get killed really quickly or make a bad decision that you'll regret because you're not able to feel into it and to be able to sense second and third order consequences or danger that might be lurking around the corner. So anyways, that's the backdrop. Staring Down the Wolf is about that. Now, this book is really interesting because when I was approached by Macmillan, my agent to write it, there you go, Michael Homler, he wanted me to write a Navy SEAL leadership book. And I put my little quotes up because I've done that. The Way of the SEAL is kind of like a Navy SEAL leadership book, and that was a Wall Street Journal bestseller. And I said, okay, I can do that. I will do that if I can do it my own way. And I want to write a book about emotional awareness and emotional development because I think that's what leaders really need right now. So I'll figure out how to make it cool, sexy Navy SEAL stuff, but I'm going to also weave that in. So the original title was going to be this, what's now the subtitle, 7 leadership commitments that forge elite teams.
Yeah.
So it's about leaders building and leading with and through their team because everything is done with a team. There's very, very few people who do things alone. And in order to bring out the best in your team, then you've got to show up as your best self as a leader. In order to show up as your best self as a leader, you've got to clear up your emotional shadow, your biases, and your negative reactionary conditioning. And how do I know this? Because I had all of it. Sure. Even as a successful Navy SEAL leader. I make the claim that building an elite team and leading in the SEALs was far easier than leading as an entrepreneur and corporate leader. Far easier, because I had 80% of it done for me by the SEAL teams. The culture was a badass, mentally tough, resilient culture. The system promoted mission focus. It recruited like-minded, homogeneous, kick-ass guys. Right. And we when we came together, it was basically turn a few dials, and all of a sudden, poof! All I had to do was not screw it up. When I started my first business as an entrepreneur, was a brewing company called the Coronado Brewing Company, because who doesn't want free beer for life, after all? So I was thinking it's got to be a good mission. So I started the Coronado Brewing Company, and I just kind of blindly went into partnership with my brother-in-law. Then he brought his brother in, and then now it's the three of us, and I was just codependently just nodding my head yes all the way, put my Navy SEAL night vision goggles on, and went to town to do the tactical stuff to get the business open. All the while, behind me, my subconscious was just ignoring the cues that these guys were lining up a big ambush. And where did they ambush me? And we ended up in this big legal brawl over control of the business. Not an uncommon thing. Most of your listeners were like, yeah, I've been there. I've been there. We fought for 3 years. Again, as a Navy SEAL, I was like a sniper. I was winning the battle legally, but I was losing the moral and emotional war. My wife was getting destroyed. It was her brothers. She was just getting torn apart by the family. Her parents got divorced over it, because the dad, who was a Marine, was supporting, his fellow veteran who was trying to do the right thing for the shareholders, and the mom was supporting her sons who could do no wrong. You could see how this could go south really fast.
Absolutely. I work with family business, so I understand exactly what you're talking about.
So my point is, each of these commitments, the first commitment is courage.
Yes.
And in that sense, courage to me is the courage to stare down the fear of risk, right? And the fear of basically extreme discomfort by having difficult conversations, by admitting that things aren't going so well, by admitting that your decisions are leading us down the wrong path, and admitting that you're not stepping up to make courageous choices. I did not step up to make courageous choices, to confront what was happening. I did not step up to really pay attention to my intuition. I did not try to connect and have conversations that could have resolved and brought us back into alignment, and the whole thing blew up. Right. So each chapter of these 7 commitments, by the way, the other commitments, courage, trust, respect, those are the 3 foundational commitments. That opens up to growth, which is a 4th commitment. Daily growth with and through the team. Vertical growth, and I'm talking about character development growth. Then you have this kind of, you open up to this passion for excellence. Mm-hmm. That leads to great resiliency when you just commit to growth and excellence every single day, built on a foundation of courage, trust, respect. And then alignment. And alignment is kind of like what keeps everything together. Well, in that first business, I didn't have any of those, and it started out because I didn't have the courage to make the right decisions, even when I kind of knew that they were the right decisions. So it's hard work.
Yeah, and it's
hard work. And so I wanted to show, A, as a leader, that this is hard work. B, that I'm not perfect. Every story about falling down is about me. Every story about how this is done well is about some SEAL or special operator who's just kicking ass and taking names. So it has that kind of yin-yang juxtaposition.
Well, I think that this is part of the illusion, is that winners are winners and losers are losers, and that's an illusion.
It is.
Every winner has been a loser, and every loser has had wins. Right. So where are you going to focus is so vastly important. And this really brings us to right now, as we record this at the end of the first, the beginning of the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter of 2020. It's officially in the Chinese calendar the year of the rat. However, using your philosophy, we are in the year of VUCA.
Year of VUCA, right?
Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environments. And
rats thrive in VUCA.
Right. Rats thrive in VUCA.
Rats and cockroaches thrive in VUCA.
There you go. So talk to the people right now who I know. I mean, I'm having these conversations all the time. We're doing a lot of stuff online to help people. People are in fear, Mark. Yeah. They're in fear. The research prior to all this was that the average American was $400 away from a financial disaster.
Right.
And we can judge that and we can make comments about it, but the fact is it's still what it is. And that $400 was spent last week.
Mm-hmm.
So now people are looking at the potential of losing their homes, of losing their jobs, of losing their income, of losing family members because of the potential of death with the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also said that I think that the most infectious thing of all is panic. It's far more infectious than COVID-19 is the panic. And with that, the ability to think in any way that is creatively agile or with resilience goes out of the window because you're in fear and you're in survival mode. You're at lowest rung of thinking.
Right.
Talk to us about, as we've got a leader listening in here who may have to lay off 100 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people. And at the same level, can we talk to the person who I might be let go of and everything that I've built could go out of the window? Because we've been living in a false reality anyway, but
right.
We've all been living that.
We have, like, the whole, when we structure our societies and the way the economies work, it's all built on a story. Yep. And then we buy into that story, just like fiat money is a story, debt's a story. The transactional relationship we have with our bosses and, our employees, it's a story. It's a story that's built on trust. And if that trust breaks down, then the story breaks down. And that's kind of what's happened right now. People are like, holy cow, this COVID-19 has come, and it's scared a lot of people, but hasn't affected me too much. I mean, pretty much healthy. I wake up every day, I look out the window, the ocean's still there, the sky's still there. I check in my inner domain, I'm still the same Mark. And I'm like, so how has this really affected me? Not at all. Right? I have to jigger my business a little bit. I have to think about things a little bit differently, but change, I've learned through my training with the SEALs and beyond that change is the constant.
Yes.
And VUCA means it's just change is more volatile and it leads to uncertainty. Doubt is eliminated through action, but it's the type of action that you take that's really important. Not just keep doing more things and expecting different results because you're doing the same things, but thinking a little bit differently, asking better questions. Like, what is really going on here and what's the worst thing that could happen to me? If you still got your health, good. Still got your family, good. You still got your mind, good. Still got your heart, good. Everything's good. Now put it to use to think a new way. There's a new normal. When we get through this, things aren't going to go back to the way they were.
Definitely not.
But they will be the way they are. So adapt to the way they are. Try to envision how things will be when this settles down. How is it going to affect you? If you're about ready to get laid off, breathe into it. So one of the tools we use in the SEALs to help SEALs just slow down and go make better decisions under fire, to maintain a cool head under fire, we call it slow is smooth, smooth is fast, is to pause, right? Just stop. Now, the COVID and your home stay is a great opportunity to stop, but most people are still spinning around mentally because it's disrupted their patterns, which was built on that old story.
Yes.
So use this time to just stop doing stuff and start thinking differently. How do you do that? Back to what we started with. Begin to slow down and, to go within. Begin a practice of breathing. Begin a practice of mindfulness. And those two go hand in glove. They're the same practice, right? So we call it box breathing. So pause, which basically interrupts the information going into the amygdala, which is sniffing for fear and finding fear and then spinning you into more fear. So you interrupt that by staring down that fear physiologically by just pausing. Yeah. Then you breathe into it. Take several, 5 or 10 deep nostril diaphragmatic breaths. Hold your breath at the top and bottom even for a few counts. So that's why we call it box breathing. It's in a pattern of a box. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Don't do anything while you're breathing. Don't think. Just concentrate on that quality of that breath. So it's going to concentrate your mind, narrow your focus, slow down the thoughts that are spinning around, and interrupt those fear loops. Then think better. And you think better by asking better questions, right? What's the worst that could happen? How can I come through this stronger? how can I set myself up not just to get another job, but maybe to align with my calling finally and to launch into that boldly with courage. As a leader, how can I retune my business to be more aligned with a bigger mission and maybe make some changes that I was ignoring before, right? Maybe I need to let go of some things. Maybe I need to add some things. There's a lot of opportunity here. So we put together in our company what I call the COPE plan, Crisis Opportunity Plan and Execution. And it's got a phase 1. This is what we know now. Do these things. Phase 2 is, if this happens, then we do this. And phase 3 is, if that happens, then we do this. And so it's just like a Navy SEAL mission. We would have an 80% solution. We'd move toward the target and we'd get information. Sometimes the information came in the form of a roadside bomb or an ambush, people shooting at us. And then we're like, okay, plan B. But we knew what plan B was because we had already seen it. We'd already looked for it. And so plan B was executed immediately.
And that's the problem, Mark, is that right now, I think because of this illusionary economy we've been in, most people don't have a plan B. They had a plan A that was going to get bigger.
That's right.
Get better. And, I've talked a lot about that we were worshiping the gods of hustle. and America, or North America at least, is really the mecca of entrepreneurship. And as a result of that and hustle, there have been, and I've been one of them too, I understand, all-in entrepreneurs. And an all-in entrepreneur is, I'm all in. I'm going to put all my money back in the business. I'm going to grow this. I'm going to make it better. And then the feces hits the fan and we're in a different world all of a sudden. And there are a lot of people like that. So there are a lot of people with jobs who now the jobs are going to go away. And there are entrepreneurs who are doing well, who probably have enough to maintain for a month or two, but not much more. And there are entrepreneurs who don't have enough to last another couple of weeks. So,
well, this isn't the first time.
Is what I'm saying for that.
There is, but you have to just slow down and look for it. In 2001, I was coming back from a big event that a partner and we had a training business called Momentum Training. And we did a big event with Starbucks, like 500 people. It was, kind of an outdoor leadership team building event. We stopped at Denver. We flew through the Denver airport and we're heading toward the gate. We hear, all flights are canceled by presidential order. And we're like, what the F? So we ran and found a TV. We saw the plane hit the World Trade Center. Our jaws hit the deck. We looked at each other. We were like, oh my God. And then we looked at each other a second time about 5 minutes later, said, we better get to the rental car facility or else we're not going to be getting out of here. So we sprinted to the rental car facility, rented a car. On the way home to San Diego, we ended the business because we immediately shifted fire. We thought into it. We looked into the future. We said, there's no way the training business is going to survive this. It's going to take years to recover. So we ended the business. And I went and got a job at the University of San Diego to help launch a leadership institute and as an adjunct professor because I needed the money. So that was a pivot. And it wasn't 100% what I wanted to do, but it's what I needed to do until I got back on track. 2008, my main business then was NavySeals.com, online retail of cool guy stuff. Guess what? When the economy tanked in 2008, all e-commerce flooded to the big box, Amazon and Costco and Walmart, and they started selling everything we sold, but for way cheaper. And our business went from a few $1 million to like $2,000 a month. Literally, it just disappeared.
Right.
I had to fire everybody. My wife and I were packing boxes, what little left to have. I opened a CrossFit gym, started training 4 classes a day, and launched SEALFIT out of that. So there's always going to be change. That's the point. This is an opportunity to recognize the real nature of reality and the real nature of business is change is the new normal, but it's always been that way. It just was slower and now it's sped up. So you got to retool the way you think and the way you behave for a much faster cycle of change. And so what better opportunity than to take this downtime, especially since the government's going to prop pretty much everybody up for a period. They're going to prop businesses up. They're going to prop, people who get laid off up for a while. use this time to think into, what does this change mean to me? How can I come through this stronger, more aligned with my purpose, and really hit the ground running, or at least a slow jog when we open back up for business. It's a great opportunity. So the rest of your life isn't just doing the same thing, expecting different results, or trying to, climb that ladder that's propped against the wrong wall.